I was just going in to put my bag down. But what I saw made my heart stop. Not because of disgust, but because I realized something inside me had woken up, too late to turn back. I never imagined I'd be the kind of woman to admit this. Not out loud, not even in my own head. Sometimes, but the truth doesn't care if you're ready for it. It shows up, uninvited, and then it sits with you until you either face it, or let it consume you. That night, I got home earlier than expected. My conference wrapped up ahead of schedule, and all I could think about was a hot shower and a quiet glass of wine. I slipped inside the house without turning on the main lights, careful not to wake Evan, or so I thought. The living room was dim, lit only by the soft flicker of the TV. That's when I saw him, my son, sitting there, completely unaware I was watching. His hand moved under a blanket, rhythmically. His eyes were glassy, locked onto something private on the screen. My breath caught in my throat. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I froze, not in horror, not in shame, in curiosity, and something else I still struggle to name. He was 17, not a child, not yet a man, and in that moment, I saw him differently, for the first time. Vulnerable, alone, and beautiful, in a way I wasn't prepared for. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I know. But it happened, and it changed everything. I wish I could tell you that what I saw that night was a one-time shock. That I went upstairs, buried the moment, and life moved on like nothing had changed. But that would be a lie. The truth is, things had already changed long before that night, long before the image of Evan, alone and exposed in the soft glow of our living room, took root in my memory. After the divorce, it was just the two of us. Me and him. The house felt bigger, quieter, emptier. I'd fill the silence with podcasts, laundry, even the hum of the vacuum just to remind myself I was still here. Still needed, still alive. Evan was always polite, quiet, helpful when asked, but I noticed how the light in his eyes had dimmed. He'd grown quieter, more distant, not out of anger, but as if he were slowly folding inward. I thought maybe it was just the divorce. Or maybe the age. I never imagined he might be lonely, too. We shared meals, schedules, and the same roof, but there were walls between us. Not physical, but emotional, unspoken. He never cried about his dad leaving. Never raised his voice. He just adapted. And maybe that's what broke me the most. Because deep down, I realized I'd been doing the same thing. Going through the motions, being fine. But neither of us really was. Not then. And definitely not after what happened next. There was a time when Evan would follow me around the kitchen, asking endless questions about dinner or school or how long to microwave leftover pizza. He used to laugh at my terrible music choices and sit beside me during rainy afternoons just to be close. But lately, he barely spoke unless spoken to. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers pull away. They need space. But this felt different, like we were drifting. Slowly, silently, with no map to guide us back. There was this quiet weight in the air between us. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. He was disappearing. Not physically, but emotionally, like a photograph slowly fading under the sun. I would glance at him sometimes and catch glimpses of the boy I raised. The one who used to call me his best friend. But more often, I saw someone else, taller, broader, quieter, a stranger with my son's eyes. And maybe it scared me. Maybe it made me ache in places I couldn't name. He'd retreat to his room for hours. I'd knock, leave food by the door. He always said, thanks. But the door stayed closed. I began to miss the little things, the sound of him brushing his teeth. The way he'd peek around the hallway just to check if I was home. He didn't do that anymore. Instead, I'd sometimes find him sitting on the couch long after midnight, staring at nothing, the TV playing static, the room dim and still. I'd ask if he was okay. He'd always nod, always lie. And I stopped pushing. Because I was tired, too. Tired of being the strong one. The one who had to hold it all together while no one asked if I was falling apart. Tired of pretending our family wasn't shattered. Tired of wondering if he saw me as more than just a woman buried in old routines and tired smiles. Tired of missing someone who lived just down the hall. But it wasn't until that night in the living room that I realized he wasn't the only one fading. I was fading too. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because I'd flown home early to avoid the weekend rush. My flight landed just after sunset, and by the time I pulled into the driveway, the sky had turned a soft gray blue, the kind that makes everything feel heavier. I didn't text Evan. I wanted to surprise him, maybe even cook something together like we used to. I unlocked the front door quietly, stepping into the familiar stillness of home. Only a small lamp in the living room was on, casting a warm but shadowed glow. That's when I saw him. He was on the couch, knees slightly parted, a throw blanket draped across his lap. The TV flickered with muted light, but his eyes weren't on it. He was focused on his laptop, lips slightly parted, eyes glazed with a kind of intensity I hadn't seen in him before. And his hand, it moved slowly, deliberately, beneath the blanket. My breath caught. I froze. Not out of shock, at least not the kind I expected. It wasn't disgust or fear, it was something quieter. He looked so far away, so lost inside himself, and in that moment, I felt like I was the one trespassing. I could have walked away, should have, but my feet didn't move. Instead, I stood there, quietly watching, the hallway shadows swallowing me. He hadn't heard me come in, didn't sense my presence. He was alone, completely vulnerable, completely unaware. And yet, something in me stirred, something ancient, conflicted. I knew this wasn't just about what he was doing. It was about the loneliness in that room, the kind that mirrored my own. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that waits for silence to speak. I don't remember deciding to clear my throat. It just happened. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the need to shatter the unbearable intimacy of that moment. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted him to know I was there. The sound startled him. His body tensed. The laptop slammed shut. His eyes shot to mine, wide with panic. For a second, we were both frozen, like children caught in something neither of us fully understood. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no words came out. I should have said I was sorry. I should have laughed it off, excused myself, gone upstairs and let the world reset. But I didn't. Instead, I walked in, calm, slow, placing my bag by the armchair as if this were any ordinary evening. I didn't think you'd still be up, I said, my voice unnervingly steady. He blinked, confused, humiliated. I thought you weren't coming back tonight. I came early. I smiled gently, eyes scanning him, not just his posture, but his silence, the way he seemed torn between shame and some deeper emotion he couldn't name. I sat down across from him, letting the quiet stretch thin between us. You don't have to explain anything, I said softly. We all have needs. He didn't speak, but his gaze met mine, uncertain, wounded, searching. That's when I leaned in, not physically, not yet, but emotionally, with my words, my tone. There's nothing wrong with curiosity, Evan, nothing to be ashamed of. He swallowed, throat tight. I didn't mean for you to see. I know, I said. And I did. But part of me was glad I had. Not for what he did, but for what it revealed, that somewhere beneath the silence and distance, he was still there, alive, needing, feeling. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The room held its breath. So did I. Evan looked down, his hands clenched tightly in his lap now. The blanket had been adjusted. The moment sealed behind a wall of embarrassment. But it lingered in the air, thick, heavy, undeniable. I should have let him go. I should have stood up, wished him good night, and walked upstairs like any decent mother would. But I didn't move. Because something had shifted, and not just in him. I wasn't repulsed. I wasn't horrified. What I felt was far more dangerous. I felt seen. And not in the way I was supposed to. In a way I hadn't felt in years. This house had been so quiet, so numb for so long. Even our pain had learned how to walk softly. But now, sitting across from my son, his cheeks still red, his eyes wet with shame, I felt something awaken. Something I had buried beneath routines and responsibilities and cold kitchen dinners. I know this is awkward, I whispered, but I'm not here to judge you. His eyes flickered to mine. Vulnerable, uncertain, hopeful. Do you need to talk? I offered. He shook his head slowly, then nodded, then looked away. I never expected you. I didn't expect to feel this, I admitted, before I could stop myself. He looked back at me, eyes narrowing, not in suspicion, but in understanding. And suddenly, there was no couch between us, no hallway, no years of unspoken grief, just two people sitting in the middle of a quiet night, facing a truth neither had language for. I'm here, I said again. His breathing slowed, his fists relaxed, and for the first time in what felt like years, he didn't look like a boy. He looked like a soul reaching for another. And I didn't pull away. Morning always brings clarity, or at least that's what I used to believe. But when I opened my eyes the next day, nothing felt clear, only heavier. The sunlight streamed through the blinds in long, quiet beams. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the occasional creak of the house settling, and then his footsteps. Soft, hesitant. Evan was awake. I stayed in bed a little longer, staring at the ceiling, listening as he moved around the kitchen. The sounds were familiar, mugs clinking, the microwave door closing, but they felt different now, as if we were both trying to recreate normal from a script neither of us believed in anymore. When I finally came down, he was sitting at the table, stirring cereal that had gone soggy. He didn't look up, but I knew he'd heard me. Morning, I said, voice light, too light. Hey, he mumbled. That was it. No eye contact, no smile, just silence and spoons against porcelain. I poured myself coffee and sat across from him. The space between us, just a few feet, felt like miles. I wanted to speak, to ask him how he slept, to check if he was okay, but I was afraid of the answer. Or worse, that he'd pretend everything was fine. He finally looked at me. Just a glance, but it landed like a punch. There was guilt in his eyes, but also something else, fear, confusion, a flicker of shame that made my chest ache. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice so low I barely heard it. I reached for my cup and nodded slowly. There's nothing to be sorry for. He didn't respond, just went back to stirring, eyes fixed on the swirl of milk and flakes. We didn't talk after that. Not for the rest of the day. But that silence, it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with everything we couldn't say. And everything we still felt. What kind of mother even thinks those thoughts? That's what kept echoing in my head all night, and well into the next day. I tried to busy myself, laundry, dishes, replying to emails I didn't care about, but the image wouldn't leave me. Him, sitting there, vulnerable, needing, and me, not turning away. I kept replaying it, frame by frame, the way his eyes met mine, the shame on his face, the pull in my chest. It wasn't maternal, that's what scared me the most. It was something else entirely. I told myself I was just lonely, that I'd mistaken tenderness for something more, that maybe I only wanted to feel close to someone again, anyone. But even that felt like a lie, because it wasn't just anyone. It was Evan. My son. And still, the part of me that should have recoiled didn't. Instead, it lingered in the memory. It longed for more, for his voice, his gaze, even the quiet he carried when he entered a room. God, what's wrong with me? That night, I stood in the hallway outside his room for a long time. I didn't knock. I didn't go in. I just stood there, listening to the soft murmur of his music, the light rhythm of his breathing through the door. I should have walked away. I should have told myself this would pass. But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew something had already begun. And it wasn't going to end just because I wanted it to. It didn't happen the next day, or the day after that. But something between us shifted, quietly, undeniably. The way he looked at me held more hesitation now, but also more depth, like he was trying to read something in me he didn't yet understand. Or maybe didn't want to. I felt it too. The stillness in the air when we passed each other, the long pauses before speaking, the shared glances that lasted just a second too long. Every moment felt charged, but no one dared name it. Then, one evening, I was folding laundry in the living room. He walked in, freshly showered, hair damp, eyes tired. I expected him to go straight upstairs like he usually did, but instead, he sat down. Right next to me. Neither of us said a word at first. The TV played some forgettable show in the background. I kept folding, pretending I wasn't aware of how close he was. But I could feel it, his presence. His breath, the warmth of his body barely brushing mine. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Can we just sit here for a bit?" His voice cracked on the word, "here." I nodded, "Of course." He leaned slightly, his shoulder touching mine, a simple gesture, soft, safe, but in that moment, it felt louder than anything either of us could say. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. We sat there like that for what felt like forever, breathing in the silence. Letting it wrap around us. It wasn't innocent, but it wasn't wrong either. It just was. And I think we both knew. That was the beginning of the second time. Even if neither of us said it out loud. I've tried to tell myself that lines only matter if you choose to see them. That boundaries blur when you're drowning in silence. When no one touches you for years. When you wake up every day wondering if anyone even notices you're still there. But deep down, I know what happened between Evan and me isn't something the world would understand. Maybe I don't fully understand it myself. It didn't explode. There were no fireworks, no gasps, no sweeping declarations. It crept in, slowly, softly, like fog curling through a window left slightly open. And we let it in. I still replay that first night. The look on his face. The weight of my own heartbeat. The quiet ache that made me stay instead of run. I ask myself, what kind of mother does that? But I already know the answer. A mother who was breaking. A woman who had forgotten what it felt like to be needed. To be seen. To be wanted, not for what she gives, but for who she is underneath all the masks. I didn't plan any of this. But I didn't stop it either. And now, we carry this thing between us. Quiet, hidden, unnamed, but very real. So, tell me. If you were in my shoes, if you saw what I saw, felt what I felt, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed, like I did?